Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. The dead cannot testify, but paper remembers everything. Deep within a salt mine repository, sealed away from public inquiry, lies a dossier designated only as Case File 734A. It details a disappearance so absolute, a silence so profound, that it has outlasted every investigator, every witness, and every family member who once sought answers. This is the story of that file, the chronicle of a mystery that has officially outlived all who could speak of it. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some stories are not meant to be found. They are buried, not in soil, but in silence, waiting in places the world has forgotten. In 1998, during the decommissioning of the Verkhnechkamsk salt deposit in Russia, a site once exploited for its vast potash reserves, workers broke through a false wall nearly 2 kilometers beneath the Earth's surface. What they found was not another vein of sylvanite, but a sealed, lead-lined chamber, cold to the touch and silent as a tomb. Inside, resting on a simple steel table, was a single, leather-bound dossier. Its cover was unmarked, its leather strangely preserved by the dry saline air. This document, now known only by its archival designation, File 734, is the heart of a mystery that has no living witnesses. The Salt Mine Dossier, as it's unofficially called, should not exist. Official records for the mine show no such chamber, no such project. The men who built it are ghosts, their names absent from any ledger. The dossier itself is a paradox. Its contents, a collection of technical reports, encrypted communiques, medical logs, and personal journal entries, detail the final 90 days of a clandestine Soviet research outpost known as Station Vostto Zero. The official history is that Vostto Zero was a meteorological station in the remote Tunguska Basin, lost to a catastrophic fire in the winter of 1959. All 37 personnel were declared dead. The case was closed. But the dossier tells a different story. It speaks of a project codenamed Echo, a study not of weather, but of something far more esoteric. The early entries are clinical, filled with scientific jargon about resonant frequencies and geophysical anomalies. But as the pages turn, the tone shifts. The confident hand of the lead scientist, Dr. Eris Thorne, becomes erratic. He writes of auditory phenomena, a low, persistent hum that wasn't picked up by any of their instruments, a sound the entire team could feel in their bones. He describes it as a whisper from the Earth's core. The medical logs corroborate this, noting a spike in insomnia, paranoia, and acute auditory hallucinations among the staff. The mystery deepens when you consider how this dossier survived. Why was it not at Vostok Zero? Why was it sealed in a lead-lined tomb hundreds of miles away, deep within a salt mine? The prevailing theory is that one person escaped. Someone managed to flee the unfolding disaster at the station, carrying the only record of what truly happened. They traveled in secret, found this deep forgotten place, and entombed the truth, perhaps hoping it would one day be found, or perhaps praying it never would. But that person is long dead. The creators of Project Echo are dead. The personnel of Vostok Zero are dead. The officials who classified the incident are dead. All that remains is this book, this silent narrator, from a forgotten catacomb of salt. It is the beginning and the end of the story, a complete account of an event for which there are no longer any human witnesses. We are left to read between the lines, to decipher the frantic scribbles of a doomed man, and to ask the terrifying question, what did they hear in the dark? The official report on Vostok Zero is brutally concise. A faulty generator, a fuel leak, an uncontrollable blaze exacerbated by Arctic winds. It's a clean, simple explanation. But the salt mine dossier paints the station not as the site of an accident, but as a vanishing point. A place where 37 souls simply ceased to be. According to the coordinates logged in the dossier, Vostok Zero was situated in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. A desolate basin where the winter temperature can drop to 60 below. No roads led there. It was supplied by air, an isolated speck of human endeavor in an endless expanse of white. For decades, the location was a classified military zone. But in 2011, a privately funded expedition, using the dossier's coordinates as their map, finally reached the site. They found no evidence of a catastrophic fire. There was no scorched earth, no twisted metal skeleton of a generator building. The main habitat module was still standing, partially buried in snow, its metal skin pitted by time but structurally intact. The expedition's drone footage is haunting. It shows a ghost station, a ship lost in a frozen sea. The doors are sealed, not by locks, but by decades of impacted snow and ice. The communication tower lies on its side, not snapped by an explosion, but seemingly pushed over by a slow, immense force. Inside, the scene is even more disturbing. The expedition team that breached the main airlock found a place frozen in mid-moment. A chessboard sat with a game half played. Mugs of what was once coffee rested on tables. In the medical bay, instruments were laid out for a procedure that never began. But there were no bodies, no signs of a struggle, no blood. It was as if the 37 inhabitants had simply evaporated. The dossier provides the only clues. In his final entries, Dr. Thorne describes the hum changing in pitch, becoming a resonant frequency that seemed to affect their perception of reality. He wrote of strange visual distortions at the edge of their vision and moments of missing time. His last legible entry, dated December 23, 1959, is not a scientific observation, but a terrified plea. It is not a sound, it is a presence. It is unfolding the space between things. We are not going mad. We are being unwritten. What does it mean to be unwritten? The dossier offers no further explanation. It only provides a chilling inventory, taken the day before the final entry. Every piece of equipment is accounted for. All personnel are listed as present and on duty. The very next page is blank. The official narrative of a fire was a lie, a fabricated story to seal a file and forget. But the truth is perhaps more terrifying. Vostok Zero wasn't a place of death, it was a place of erasure. The station itself is the only remaining monument to this impossibility, a silent, frozen testament to the day the world bent, and 37 people fell through the crack. The mystery outlived them all, leaving only their abandoned possessions to ask the question, where did they go? Tucked between the pages of the medical log and the salt mine dossier was a single black and white photograph. It's small, slightly overexposed, and creased from time. The caption on the back, written in neat Cyrillic script, reads, Winter Solstice Celebration, 1959. This is the last known image of the personnel of Vostok Zero. At first glance, it's a mundane scene. About 20 men and women are huddled together inside what appears to be the station's common area. They are smiling, some raising glasses. They wear thick sweaters and fur-lined hats. It's a portrait of life, of camaraderie in a desolate place. It is the last proof that these people were real. But forensic analysis and digital enhancement of the photograph have revealed a series of unsettling anomalies that defy logical explanation. For decades, the photo was just a grainy image, but with modern technology, we can peel back its layers. The first anomaly is a clock on the wall behind the group. When magnified, its hands clearly point to 10:15. This directly contradicts Dr. Thorne's journal, which states the celebration began after the evening meal, around 7 p.m. It's a small discrepancy, but a strange one. Why would the clock be wrong by over 3 hours? More disturbing is the reflection in the window on the far right of the frame. The angle of the shot means we shouldn't see the photographer. Yet a faint, distorted human-like shape is visible, superimposed over the dark, snowy landscape outside. It's too tall, its limbs too long. It doesn't match the physique of any known crew member. Some analysts have dismissed it as a simple double exposure, a technical flaw of the camera. But the shape doesn't look like anyone in the main group. It appears to be standing just behind the photographer, a silent, uninvited guest at the party. The most chilling detail, however, is found by analyzing not the light, but the shadows. The room is lit by a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, which should cast sharp, predictable shadows. And it does, for every person except one. A young geologist named Lena Petrova, standing near the back, casts no shadow at all. She is as solid and clear as everyone else, yet where her shadow should fall against the wall behind her, there is nothing. It is a physical impossibility. We are left with a single frozen moment that is fundamentally broken. A clock showing the wrong time, a phantom reflection, and a woman without a shadow. With every person in this photograph long gone, we can never ask them what was happening. Was this a genuine celebration, or was it a final desperate gathering before the end? Were these anomalies the first signs of the perceptual distortions Dr. Thorne described in his log? This photograph is no longer a memento. It is a piece of evidence for a crime with no perpetrator and no victims, only missing persons. It is a silent witness, telling a story in a language of impossible physics that we cannot comprehend. The mystery has not only outlived the people, it has infected their very last image. The story of Vostto Zero doesn't end in the frozen basin or the salt mine. Its ghostly echo reverberates in a place called Kherson, a closed town established 200 kilometers from the station's coordinates. For decades, Kherson was a zato, a secret city wiped from all public maps, home to the military personnel and scientists tasked with monitoring the region after the 1959 incident. Access was forbidden. Communication with the outside world was censored. The official purpose of Kherson was long-term atmospheric study. Its true purpose was to watch the silent, empty spot on the map where Vostto Zero once stood, and to listen. The original inhabitants of Kherson are all gone now, bound by state-sponsored oaths of silence that they took to their graves. But secrets, like radiation, have a half-life. They decay, and in the process, they release fragments of the truth. The whispers are the stories told by the children and grandchildren of the original Kherson staff, second- and third-hand accounts, fragmented and distorted by time, but all circling the same dark core. One persistent story tells of the blind zone, an area around the old station where compasses would spin uselessly and electronic equipment would fail without cause. Patrols were forbidden from entering this zone, ordered to only observe it from a distance. Another recurring rumor speaks of the winter voices. It was said that during the polar night, Strange melodic broadcasts could sometimes be picked up on secure radio frequencies. It wasn't Morse code or human speech, but something that sounded like harmonized whispers, a signal with no discernible point of origin. The most unsettling whisper is that of the returned. According to a handful of accounts in the late 1970s, a lone figure was spotted on long-range surveillance, walking out of the blind zone toward Kherson. The figure was dressed in outdated 1950s Arctic gear. Before a team could be dispatched, the figure simply disappeared from the screen, as if they were never there. The official logs, of course, show nothing. These stories are folklore, the ghost stories of a closed society. They cannot be proven. But when cross-referenced with the salt mine dossier, they form a chilling pattern. The blind zone aligns with Dr. Thorne's descriptions of geophysical anomalies. The winter voices echo his account of the persistent, unexplainable hum. And the story of the returned feels like a terrifying postscript to his final entry about being unwritten. Kherson is no longer a closed city, but it remains a place of silence. The people who live there now know nothing. The watchtowers are rusted, the barracks are empty. The mystery of Vostto Zero has outlived not only its direct witnesses, but also the generation of guards who were tasked with burying it. All that is left is the dossier, a broken photograph, an empty station, and these whispers on the wind, the final, fading echoes of a truth that has been lost to time. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some secrets do not die with people. They wait in the paper and the ink. For 70 years, the Summerton Point Vanishing was a ghost story, a cautionary tale whispered by sailors, and a footnote in regional crime statistics. The official file, now digitized and redacted into meaninglessness, reads like a clerical error. The lighthouse keeper, Thomas Croft, his wife Eleanor, and their 2 children, Samuel and Lily. Vanished, November 12, 1951. No signs of struggle, no bodies, no answers. The case was closed, labeled unresolved, and left to be consumed by time. But files can be sanitized. Memories can be twisted into folklore. A private journal, however, a journal holds the unfiltered truth, the raw fear of a man who looked into the abyss and found it staring back. This is the ledger of Detective Alistair Finch, the lead investigator. It was found last year, tucked away in the floorboards of his former home, a relic that outlived its author and every single person he ever questioned. Finch's first entry on the case is dated November 14, 1951. His handwriting is precise, clinical. He describes the scene with a cold detachment that would soon crumble. The lighthouse, a silent white sentinel against a bruised gray sky. The keeper's cottage unlocked. Inside, the air was still and heavy. A pot of stew, cold on the stove. The dinner table was set for 4, plates untouched. In the living room, a rocking chair swayed gently in a draft from the door Finch himself had opened. Eleanor Croft's knitting lay in a basket, the needles still pierced through a half-finished child's scarf. Everything was in its place, a perfect tableau of domestic life, frozen at the exact moment the actors simply walked off stage. There was no disarray, no overturned furniture, no hint of violence. It was a scene of profound and unnerving peace. In the official report, this is where the description ends. But in his ledger, Finch wrote more. There is a hum, he wrote, a low, resonant thrumming in the air that I can feel in my teeth. The other constables claim not to notice it, attributing it to the wind or the sea. But this is different. It is a machine-like vibration that feels ancient, geological. It is not coming from the lamp mechanism, which we have shut down. It seems to emanate from the very rock the lighthouse is built upon. This detail, this sensory experience that could not be logged as evidence, appears again and again in his early notes. He describes it as a source of growing dread, a sound that unsettles the soul. And then there was the logbook. The official keeper's log was a record of weather patterns, passing ships, and maintenance. The final entry, logged at 21:03 on the night they vanished, was not words. It was a symbol, a perfect hand-drawn geometric shape, a circle with 3 intersecting lines that met precisely in the center, each line ending with a smaller, solid dot. It was drawn with the same pen used for the rest of the log, but it felt alien, an intrusion of some cryptic language into a world of mundane record-keeping. Finch photocopied the symbol, but his superiors dismissed it as a meaningless doodle. In his ledger, Finch called it the key, though he did not yet know what lock it was meant to open. The hum in the rock and the symbol in the logbook were specters Alistair Finch could not exorcise, but they were not evidence. They were not leads. An investigation must be built on a foundation of fact, of witness testimony and tangible clues. And at Summerton Point, that foundation was sand. Finch's ledger documents a meticulous, yet desperately futile search for answers in a world that refused to provide any. He and his team spent weeks combing every inch of the peninsula. They scaled the treacherous cliffs, their ropes whipping in the incessant, salty wind. Divers, tethered to boats tossing on the violent gray waves, explored the churning waters at the base of the lighthouse, their searchlights cutting murky paths through the cold depths. They found nothing. No scrap of clothing, no sign of a fall, no wreckage from a boat. It was as if the Atlantic itself had conspired to keep the secret. The human element proved just as barren. Summerton Point was a place of profound isolation. The nearest neighbor was a sheep farmer named Silas Blackwood, a man whose property was 5 miles inland. Finch's notes on his interview with Blackwood, conducted 3 days after the family was reported missing, are filled with a palpable sense of frustration. Blackwood, now deceased for over 40 years, was a man of few words. He confirmed he'd seen the lighthouse lamp burning steady on the night of the 12th. When pressed, he mentioned seeing odd lights over the point, but dismissed them as coastal fog playing tricks on the beam or perhaps the aurora. "The sky plays its own games out here, Detective," he'd said, a quote Finch recorded verbatim. It was a dead end. Next was the postman, Arthur Gable, who delivered mail to the point twice a week. Gable, who passed away in 1988, was the last known person to have seen the family alive. He delivered a parcel to Eleanor Croft on the morning of the 12th. He described her as being in good spirits, talking about plans for the children's upcoming Christmas. Finch pressed him. Did she seem worried? Distracted? Was anyone else there? Gable's answers were all negative. She was perfectly normal. The family was happy. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Every interview was a new brick in the wall Finch was running into. He investigated Thomas Croft's past, searching for gambling debts, secret enemies, or a hidden life. He found only the record of a quiet, dependable man, a veteran of the war who sought solitude and found it at the edge of the world. He looked into Eleanor, but she was a local girl who had never wanted to leave. There were no secret lovers, no hidden despairs. They were, by all accounts, exactly what they appeared to be. The case was a perfect vacuum. As the weeks turned into months, the pressure from Finch's superiors mounted. Resources were being wasted. The official narrative was solidifying. A tragic accident, a rogue wave, a murder-suicide. Explanations that required no evidence because the absence of evidence was their proof. Finch refused to accept it. They did not fall. They were not taken by the sea, he wrote in a furious, slanted script. They were removed. The scene was wiped clean. This was not an act of man. Time is the ultimate solvent of mysteries. It erodes evidence, silences witnesses, and turns tragedy into folklore. For the Summerton Point vanishing, the decades that followed were a long, slow process of erasure. The investigation was officially suspended in 1953. Detective Alistair Finch, after filing a final report that omitted any mention of humming rocks or cryptic symbols, took an early retirement. A man haunted by a case that had offered him a glimpse of the impossible, and then slammed the door shut. He died in 1979, taking his private obsessions, locked in his ledger, to the grave. The world, it seemed, had forgotten the Crofts. The lighthouse, a monument to their disappearance, was automated in 1965. The keeper's cottage, once a home filled with life, was abandoned to the elements. Its windows were shattered by storms, its door breached by salt and wind. The carefully set dinner table collapsed under the weight of rotting floorboards. The child's scarf, left unfinished in its basket, was unraveled by nesting mice and the patient work of decay. The story of the vanishing didn't die completely, of course. It mutated. It became a local ghost story, the Summerton Light Phantom. Fishermen would tell tales of seeing a woman's silhouette in the lantern room long after the lighthouse was automated. Teenagers would dare each other to spend a night in the derelict cottage, fleeing in terror after hearing whispers on the wind or feeling a sudden, inexplicable chill. The truth of the Croft family was buried under layers of supernatural fiction. Over the years, a handful of amateur sleuths and journalists attempted to resurrect the case. In the 1980s, a true crime author revisited the official files, but found only the sterile, redacted reports. He interviewed the handful of surviving individuals connected to the case, a retired constable, a distant cousin of Eleanor's, but their memories were faded, distorted by the intervening 30 years. They remembered the shock, the sadness, but the crucial details were gone. The trail was not just cold, it had been scoured from the earth. By the turn of the millennium, the Summerton Point vanishing was a historical curiosity. A file in a cold case archive gathering dust in a climate-controlled basement. The physical file itself is a testament to this silence. The crisp reports from 1951 are followed by decades of empty space. There are no new leads, no follow-up interviews, no further inquiries, just page after page of bureaucratic stillness. It is the paper tomb of an unsolved crime. Every person who knew the Crofts, who saw them in their final days, who heard their voices, is now gone. Silas Blackwood, the farmer who saw strange lights. Arthur Gable, the postman who delivered their last piece of mail. Every constable who walked through the silent cottage with Detective Finch. They have all joined the Crofts in whatever silence awaits. The mystery had successfully outlasted them all. It had become a perfect enigma. A story with a beginning, but no middle, and no end. And there, in that silence, it should have remained. But a ghost from the past was about to speak. In the autumn of 2023, a plain manila envelope arrived at the County Archives Department, a place more accustomed to property deeds and census records than evidence in a 70-year-old cold case. It had no return address. The postage was contemporary, but the envelope itself felt old, its paper brittle. Inside, a single sheet of yellowed onion skin paper was folded neatly. On it was a typewritten message. The font was from a vintage Underwood, the kind of machine that hadn't been in common use for half a century. The ink was faded, the alignment of the letters slightly askew. This was not a modern affectation. This was an authentic voice from the past, reaching across an ocean of time. The archivist who opened it initially thought it was a prank, or perhaps the ramblings of a local eccentric obsessed with the Summerton Point legend. But as she read, a chill settled over the room. The letter was not a confession, nor was it an explanation. It was a correction, a clarification, and it contained details that had never been made public, details that had lived and died with one man, locked away in a secret ledger. To whomever finds this, you look for a crime. You look for a killer, a motive, a body. You are looking for the wrong things. The events at Summerton Point in November of 1951 were not an ending. They were a transition. Detective Finch was closer than any of you. He heard the sound. He called it a hum, a fittingly small word for it. It is a frequency, a vibration that loosens the anchor that holds a place to one specific time. The lighthouse was not built on ordinary rock. It was built on a resonator. Finch also saw the symbol. He called it a key. He was correct. It is not a warning or a signature. It is a navigational chart and an activation sequence. Thomas Croft did not draw it as a final panicked message. He drew it because he had finally finished calculating the equation. He was not a victim. He was a willing pilot. They were not taken. They left. They were not fleeing from something in your world, but reaching for something in another. You search the sea for their bones? A pointless gesture. You would have better luck searching the stars between the stars. Stop looking for the Croft family. They are no longer the Crofts. Stop trying to solve the mystery. You lack the vocabulary to even ask the correct questions. Let the story remain a ghost story. It is a kinder, safer explanation. Some doors are not meant to be opened. This is the only warning you will receive. Forensic analysis of the letter was a series of paradoxes. The paper was conclusively dated to the 1940s. The typewriter ink showed similar aging, yet the DNA and fingerprints on the envelope and stamp belonged to no one in any database. The letter's contents were even more chilling. The mention of the hum and the symbol being a key were direct echoes of Finch's private thoughts, recorded only in the ledger that had been discovered just months prior. No one else could have known. Was it from someone who knew Finch? Someone who was there? Or is the letter itself the final piece of the puzzle? A last, taunting message, sent by an intelligence that operates on timelines we cannot comprehend. The letter provides no answers. It only deepens the shadows. It is the final witness, and it speaks in an impossible tongue, ensuring that the Summerton Point vanishing will forever remain the mystery that outlived all witnesses. The official report, bound in faded blue and stamped with a seal of finality, tells a simple, tragic story. A remote polar research station, Altan Outpost, succumbed to a sudden, catastrophic structural failure during an unseasonal blizzard in 1953. All 6 researchers, pioneers in geomagnetism, were lost. A neat, tidy explanation. But history is rarely neat, and the truth, when it's buried this deep, is never tidy. The story that has been carefully curated for public consumption begins to fray the moment you listen to the echoes left behind. The final garbled radio transmissions and the conflicting testimonies of the recovery team who arrived 2 weeks later. The last audible broadcast from Altan Outpost, recorded by a listening post in northern Canada, is not one of panicked shouts or alarms. It is a chillingly calm voice, that of lead scientist Dr. Eris Thorne, stating, "The resonance is unexpected. It's not in the rock. We were wrong. It's in us." A long pause, then static. This transmission, logged at 0217 Zulu, directly contradicts the official timeline, which places the structural failure nearly 6 hours later. Why the discrepancy? The inconsistencies multiply when we examine the debriefing transcripts of the recovery team declassified in 1998. Captain Eva Rostova, a hardened veteran of Arctic expeditions, described the scene as impossibly silent and pristine, with no sign of a blizzard or structural collapse. Her report details research notes left open on desks, half-finished cups of coffee, and no signs of violence or struggle. Yet, her subordinate, Sergeant Belyaev, testified under a separate inquiry that the outpost was a wreckage, a tomb of twisted steel and ice, claiming they had to dig for 3 days to even find the entrance. These 2 accounts describe mutually exclusive realities. How could 2 trained observers, standing in the same location at the same time, report such wildly different scenes? The mystery deepens with the photographic evidence. The official inquiry file contains a single grainy black and white photo of the outpost's main common room. It shows overturned furniture and scattered papers, supporting Sergeant Belyaev's chaotic version of events. But an identical photograph, discovered in a university archive from Dr. Thorne's estate, shows the same room in perfect order. The single difference is a dark, humanoid shape, faintly visible in the reflection of a glass instrument panel. A shape that is conspicuously absent from the official government photograph. It's as if one version was deliberately altered to create a narrative. As we peel back the layers, the simple story of an accident dissolves into a fog of contradictions. Was it a cover-up? A mass hallucination brought on by isolation? Or did the recovery team stumble into something so far beyond their comprehension that their minds simply fractured, each recording a different, more palatable version of an impossible truth? The inconsistencies are not flaws in the historical record. They are the record itself. They are the breadcrumbs, the echoes of an event so profound that it shattered not only a building and the lives within it, but perhaps the very nature of consensus reality for all who came near it. The witnesses are all gone now, their conflicting stories buried with them. All we have left are these echoes, and they don't speak of an accident. They scream of a carefully orchestrated lie. Human memory is fallible. Official records can be forged, but the earth itself does not lie. Decades after the last witness to the Altan event drew their final breath, the land beneath the abandoned outpost has begun to speak. And its testimony is perhaps the most terrifying of all. In 2022, a privately funded research group, Project Chimera, deployed a team to the Altan site, armed with technology that the original investigators could only dream of. Their mission: to conduct a deep geological and radiological survey to read the story written in the bedrock. What they found defies conventional geology. The area surrounding the former outpost exhibits a persistent, low-frequency magnetic hum. It's not a product of machinery. It's an emission from the rock itself, pulsing in a complex, almost mathematical pattern. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a network of crystalline structures several hundred meters below the surface, formations that have no business being there. They are too uniform, too geometric to be natural. Geologists who have studied the data, speaking on condition of anonymity, compare them to a circuit board embedded in the planet's crust. This resonates chillingly with Dr. Thorne's final cryptic broadcast. It's not in the rock, it's in us. Was he wrong, or was it in both? Soil and ice core samples drilled from the site compound the enigma. They contain isotopes of bismuth and polonium, with decay signatures suggesting they were subjected to an intense, short-lived burst of energy. But there is no evidence of a nuclear event, no lingering radiation signatures one would expect. It's as if a fundamental law of physics was briefly suspended, then reinstated. This physical evidence forces us to re-examine the historical data. The original Altan outpost mission was ostensibly to study polar geomagnetism. But what if that was a cover story? What if they were sent there specifically because of this pre-existing anomaly? What if their research wasn't observational, but experimental? Satellite imagery archives provide another layer of strangeness. When comparing images from the 1970s to the present day, subtle topographical changes are visible. The ground itself appears to have warped, creating a slight, almost imperceptible depression, centered precisely where the outpost once stood. It's as if the land is slowly collapsing inward, drawn toward the anomalous structures below. The geological data paints a disturbing picture. The Altan event was not a localized man-made accident. It was a symptom of something far older and far more powerful. The ground is not just a passive crime scene. It is an active participant. The anomalies are not fading over time. In some cases, they are growing stronger. The witnesses may be gone, but the primary witness, the Earth itself, has a perfect memory. And it is telling us that whatever happened at Altan Outpost in 1953 didn't truly end. It's merely dormant. If the Earth is the primary witness, then the paper trail is its corrupted transcript. For decades, the official documents related to the Altan event were sealed under the tightest national security classifications. When they were finally released, after years of legal battles by historians and journalists, the result was not clarity, but a masterclass in obfuscation. Page after page of black ink. The documents are a ghost, a silhouette of the truth, where the redactions themselves tell a more compelling story than the few words left visible. We see reports from the recovery team where entire paragraphs describing the state of the outpost are blacked out. We see medical evaluations of the team members upon their return, where the psychological assessment section is a solid block of ink. What did they see that was so traumatic it had to be erased from history? The pattern of redaction is a science in itself. They didn't just hide names or locations. They removed specific scientific data, measurements, frequencies, elemental compositions. In one annex, a table of atmospheric readings is presented, but every single numerical value has been excised. The government isn't just telling us we can't know the truth. It's showing us the very shape of the knowledge they are desperate to conceal. In the digital age, new tools have allowed researchers to analyze these redactions in aggregate. By studying the size and shape of the black bars across thousands of documents, patterns emerge. The same specific phrases, the same lengths of words, are consistently censored. One recurring redaction, a two-word phrase, appears over 300 times. Through painstaking cross-referencing with other, less censored documents from the same era, analysts have made a chillingly plausible guess as to what those two words are: non-human. But the most tantalizing clue comes from a document that was never supposed to see the light of day. A single scorched page allegedly smuggled out of a burn bag by a clerk at the records depository in the 1980s. It's a fragment of a memo from the director of the project to a high-level government official. Most of it is illegible, but a few phrases survive the flames. Sequence is not a collapse, but a successful translocation, and the biological cost is absolute. And finally, the most haunting of all, we did not lose them. We exchanged them. The implications of these words are staggering. They reframe the Altan event from a tragedy to a transaction. The 6 researchers weren't victims of an accident. They were the price of an experiment. This single page, if authentic, suggests the entire apparatus of state secrecy was not to cover up a failure, but to hide a terrifying success. The redactions are not a shield to protect the public from a horrible truth. They are a cage built of ink and bureaucracy to contain a concept that threatens our understanding of reality itself. The mystery that outlived its witnesses was not left to fade into history. It was actively, methodically, and brutally erased. History is a closed book. But what happens when someone finds a way to write a new chapter? With every original witness gone, the Altan event had become a cold case for the ages, a myth debated by academics and conspiracy theorists. But in the shadows, a new inquiry was taking shape, one operating outside the law and beyond the reach of official redactions. This was not a government committee, but a private consortium of brilliant and perhaps reckless minds. A disgraced astrophysicist, a forensic historian, and a biogeologist who had been fired for her unorthodox theories. Using anonymous funding and bleeding-edge technology, they returned to the site of Altan Outpost, determined to solve a mystery that had outlived everyone who created it. Their methods were revolutionary. They used drone-mounted LiDAR to create a 3-dimensional map of the wreckage, accurate to the millimeter, revealing structural stresses that contradicted the official blizzard narrative. They deployed sensitive microphones capable of detecting infrasound, listening for the deep hum of the earth that modern surveys had identified. They analyzed microscopic ice crystals from the deepest parts of the foundation, sequencing the fragmented environmental DNA trapped within, searching for biological signatures that did not belong in the Arctic. Their breakthrough came from the LiDAR scan. The model showed a void, a hidden space beneath the main laboratory floor that was not on any of the original blueprints. A sub-basement, deliberately concealed. After weeks of careful, silent excavation, they breached the entrance. It was not a storage room. It was a control center, and at its heart was a device of unknown origin and impossible design. A framework of non-terrestrial alloys surrounded a central sphere that seemed to absorb all light. It was connected to the bedrock, tapping directly into the geological anomaly beneath. This was not a research station studying geomagnetism. This was an amplifier. In this shielded room, they found one final audio log, preserved on a wire recorder, protected from the energy burst that had wiped everything else. The voice was Dr. Eris Thorne's, but it was not the calm, detached scientist from the last radio broadcast. It was filled with a terrifying awe. "It's open," he says, his voice trembling. "The resonance isn't just in us. It's a key. We broadcast the frequency and the lock turned. It's not a place we're seeing. It's a..." The recording cuts out. As the team's physicist analyzed the dormant device, she realized the danger. The instruments they had brought to the site, the radar, the sonic emitters, the magnetic resonance sensors, were all broadcasting energy into the ground. They hadn't just been observing the anomaly, they had been feeding it. A low hum began to fill the sub-basement, vibrating up from the floor. A laptop, monitoring the local magnetic field, began to scream a high-pitched alarm. The readings were identical to the signatures recorded during the 1953 event, but they were climbing exponentially faster. They hadn't come to solve a cold case. They had come to trigger the sequel. The mystery that outlived all its witnesses was over. A new, terrifying reality was just beginning, and they were now the first witnesses. The human voice fades, memories decay, but the machines remember. In the vacuum left by the last generation of witnesses, we turn to the artifacts they created, the technology that silently observed their lives, and perhaps their secrets. These are the technological ghosts, the faint electronic whispers from beyond the veil of time. Consider the case of listening post Epsilon 7, a decommissioned Cold War-era number station deep in the frozen taiga. For 30 years after the fall of the Soviet Union, it was silent. Dead air. Then, 6 months after the confirmed death of the project's last surviving radio operator, it began to broadcast again. Not the crisp, clear-coded messages of its heyday, but a degraded looping fragment of audio. A distorted voice, layered with static, repeating a sequence of what sounds like coordinates, and a single chilling word: incomplete. Experts have tried to clean the audio, to decipher its meaning, but the decay is too profound. It is a ghost in the static, a message whose context is lost forever, a digital soul trapped in an analog prison. Its reactivation, timed so precisely with the passing of the final human link, defies logical explanation. Was it a dead man's switch? A pre-programmed, automated final message? Or is it something more unsettling, the machine itself, left to run in isolation for decades, simply replaying the last, most urgent signal it ever received? We find similar phantoms in the digital realm. In the late 1990s, a data recovery team was tasked with salvaging records from a flooded government archive. Among the corroded hard drives was one belonging to a lead investigator on the original case, a man who died in a suspicious hiking accident years prior. Most of the data was an irretrievable sludge of corrupted code. But one file, a simple text document, was partially recoverable. It contained thousands of lines of what appeared to be nonsense characters, a classic case of data rot. Yet, when a pattern recognition algorithm was run on the text, it found a non-random structure hidden within the decay. A repeating sequence, a binary heartbeat in the noise. It wasn't a message in the traditional sense. It was the digital ghost of a file that had been erased and overwritten, again and again, so violently that only its structural shadow remained. The act of its repeated destruction was the message itself. These are not simple malfunctions. They are echoes, imprints of human intention left on inanimate objects. A security camera from an abandoned industrial complex that to this day records a single 1-second clip of an empty corridor at the exact same time every night. A ship's chronometer, salvaged from a wreck, that inexplicably chimes 13 times at midnight. Each is a piece of the puzzle, but a piece that can no longer be explained by the people who created it. We are left to perform a kind of technological seance, asking questions of silent, rusting metal and corrupted silicon, hoping that the ghosts within will answer. Before the witnesses fell silent, they wrote. They filed reports, kept journals, sent letters, and annotated documents. They lived in a world of paper and ink, and it is in that world we must now conduct our archaeology. The official narrative is a dead end, a carefully constructed facade designed to be read by the public, by superiors, by history. But the truth, we believe, was never meant for the main text. It lives in the spaces between the lines, in the hesitations of a pen stroke, in the cryptic symbols doodled in the margins. It is a code for those with the patience to look. Let us examine Archivist Document 73B, the personal logbook of Dr. Eris Thorne, a geologist assigned to the initial incident site. For months, his entries are mundane, clinical. Soil composition, seismic readings, atmospheric data. But look closer. In the margins of every 7th page, there is a small, hand-drawn symbol. A circle, bisected by a jagged line. To his superiors, it would have looked like a meaningless doodle, a habit of a bored scientist. But a cross-reference of Thorne's academic history reveals he was an amateur astronomer. The symbol is not a doodle. It is an archaic representation of a non-terrestrial object entering an atmosphere. He was keeping 2 logs simultaneously, the official one in ink and the secret one in symbols. He was telling a different story, a story he dared not write explicitly. Then there is the matter of the redactions. Official reports on the mystery are notoriously censored. Vast oceans of black ink, hiding names, dates, and entire paragraphs. We tend to see these redactions as information being taken away. But what if the redactions themselves are the information? An intelligence analyst, who has chosen to remain anonymous, contacted our archive with a startling theory. He analyzed the redaction patterns across hundreds of documents from different departments, all related to the case. He found a non-random application. The length of the black bars, when converted into a numerical sequence using a simple cipher, spelled out words. They are not from here. Silence is survival. Below. The censors, perhaps low-level clerks sympathetic to the truth but trapped in the system, were weaponizing their own tools. They were hiding a message in the very act of hiding information. This cryptographic ghost extends even to personal correspondence. The last known witness, a librarian named Alara Vance, exchanged letters with her sister for over 50 years. Her letters were cheerful, mundane, but she had a peculiar habit of misusing a specific word in every letter, a word that had no grammatical place in the sentence. The weather today was wonderfully gravity. I bought a new dress. The color is pure frequency. For decades, it was dismissed as a personal quirk. But when the words are compiled in order, they form a coherent, terrifying sentence. A final desperate message smuggled out over a lifetime. A mystery that outlived all witnesses because its testimony was delivered one cryptic word at a time. Time is the great eraser of truth. Witnesses grow old, memories fade, evidence degrades. We often assume a cold case is cold because of the simple, inexorable passage of years. But what if the cold is deliberate? What if the silence surrounding this mystery wasn't born of time, but of force? This brings us to the most disturbing possibility we must confront in the archive: that this mystery outlived its witnesses not by accident, but by design. It is a theory of active, methodical, and ruthless suppression. Let's look at the timeline. It's not just that the witnesses are gone, it's how they went. The lead investigator, a heart attack at 42, despite having no prior health conditions. The chief scientist, a single-car accident on a clear, dry night. The radio operator, a reported suicide, though his family maintains he was a devout Catholic who would never have taken his own life. The journalist who first broke the story disappeared while on assignment in South America. One or two of these might be tragic coincidences, but when you map the fates of every single person with direct, first-hand knowledge, a chilling pattern emerges. Over 4 decades, 12 key individuals met untimely, often violent, ends. The statistical probability is infinitesimal. This was not chance. This was a purge. The suppression extends beyond human lives. It targets information. In 1988, a fire at a federal records depository in St. Louis destroyed an entire wing of archives. The official cause was faulty wiring. But a retired firefighter later came forward, claiming the accelerants found at the scene were military grade. The wing that burned, it housed all the original physical evidence and case files related to our mystery. In the digital age, the methods became more subtle. Researchers who approached the topic found their careers stalling, their funding mysteriously cut, their academic reputations attacked by anonymous online sources. Data drives were wiped by sophisticated viruses that left no trace of their origin. It was a new kind of war, fought in the shadows, with the goal of creating a perfect, impenetrable silence. Who would have the resources, the reach, and the motive to sustain such a campaign for over half a century? The list of candidates is short and terrifying. A clandestine government agency operating without oversight, protecting a secret so profound it justifies any action? A powerful private corporation that stumbled upon something during a resource exploration and has been hiding it ever since? The frightening reality is that the operation was successful. They won. They outlasted every voice that could speak against them. The mystery didn't just go cold. It was frozen solid, encased in a tomb of fear, violence, and systematic erasure. The silence we now investigate is the monument to their victory. Every story has an end. Every timeline has a final point. For this mystery, that point was 18 months ago in a small, quiet hospice in rural Oregon. It was the death of an 89-year-old man named Samuel Miles. To the world, he was a retired watchmaker, a quiet recluse. But to those of us in the archive, he was everything. He was the final witness. Samuel was not a scientist, an investigator, or an official. He was a child when it happened. A 10-year-old boy who had been camping with his father in the woods on the night of the incident. He was the only civilian, the only person not affiliated with the government or military, to see what happened. What he saw broke him. His father died that night, the first victim on the official timeline. Samuel spent the rest of his life in the shadow of that trauma. He never spoke of it, not to therapists, not to his family. not to the dozens of researchers who tracked him down over the years. His silence was absolute, a wall of terrified defense. For decades, he was a living ghost, a man haunted by a memory he refused to share. We know that in the final years of his life, his paranoia intensified. He lived in a small house with blacked-out windows, communicating with the outside world only through written notes passed under the door. He was convinced he was being watched, that they were waiting for him to die, to finally close the book. His nurse confirmed that in his last lucid moments, he didn't call for family. He clutched a small, worn object in his hand and whispered the same two words over and over. The watch. It's not right. Samuel Miles died at 3:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. Upon his death, his lawyer was instructed to open a safe deposit box he had maintained for over 60 years. Researchers hoped for a journal, a map, a final confession that would blow the case wide open. But the box contained only a single item: his father's pocket watch, the one he was holding on the night he died. The watch was old, rusted, and stopped, but it was not stopped at the time of his father's death, or at any significant time we can identify. The hands were frozen at 1:53. But that wasn't the strangest part. The second hand was missing. In its place, crudely scratched into the face of the watch, was a third hand, pointing to a position that doesn't exist on a standard clock face. It was his final message. A broken timepiece, a cryptic alteration, a final impossible clue from the last person on Earth who knew the truth. With his passing, the era of living memory is over. The mystery has now officially outlived them all. All that remains are the echoes, the ghosts, and the puzzle of a broken watch, left behind by a terrified little boy who grew into a silent old man. Write in the comments where you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like. Some stories aren't meant to be told. They're meant to be forgotten. Welcome back to the Obsidian Archive. We often think of history as a library of facts, a collection of stories set in stone, waiting for us to read them. But the library is crumbling. The stones are turning to dust. We are here to talk about a story whose every page is disintegrating before our eyes, the mystery that outlived all witnesses. What happens when the only things left to testify are the records themselves, and those records are beginning to forget? This is the story of archival decay. Every government, every agency, every police department is an organism with a memory. This memory is not flesh and blood, but paper and ink, celluloid and magnetic tape, and now silicon and electricity. These are the archives, the supposed bastions of objective truth. But they are profoundly, terrifyingly fragile. Consider the primary file associated with our central mystery. We know it existed. Memos from the 1950s reference case file, AX734, we see its ghostly outline in requisition forms and transfer logs. But the file itself? It resides in a void. Official records state it was transferred to a national repository in 1982. The repository has a record of receiving a crate from that department on that day. But inside, where AX734 should have been, there was only an empty, water-stained slot. The paper, perhaps, turned to pulp and was discarded by a careless clerk decades ago. Or maybe it never made the journey at all. This is an archival silence, a gap in the record so complete it screams. We are left to wonder, was the loss accidental, a mundane tragedy of poor storage and budget cuts? Or was it a deliberate surgical removal of a truth too inconvenient to exist? The decay is not limited to paper. Audio recordings of the initial witness interviews, stored on reel-to-reel tapes, were digitized in the late 90s. But the transfer was flawed. A persistent hum obscures crucial words. The magnetic particles on the original tapes have shed over time, a process called sticky shed syndrome, making them unplayable without risking their complete destruction. The voices of the dead are trapped behind a wall of static, their final testimonies lost to the slow, inexorable march of physics. Even the digital age, which promised us permanence, has betrayed us. A hard drive from a lead investigator's computer from 2003 was recently recovered. It was supposed to contain digital scans of crime scene photographs, but the bits have flipped. Data corruption, the silent cancer of digital storage, has turned the images into meaningless blocks of color and noise. We have the container, but the content has evaporated. The archive is not a perfect memory. It is a decaying brain suffering from strokes and amnesia. Each faded photograph, each corrupted file, each missing document is a dead neuron. The story is still in there, somewhere, but its connections are severed. The mystery is no longer just about who did what and why. It is about the losing battle against entropy itself. The evidence is not just cold, it is decomposing. The witnesses are gone, and the world they inhabited is fading, leaving us with nothing but the ghosts of data and the certainty that the complete story is now and forever will be irretrievable. In the quantum realm, the simple act of observing a particle changes its state. The universe, it seems, is camera-shy. This principle, the observer effect, extends beyond physics and into the very fabric of the stories we tell. When we investigate the past, we do not simply uncover it. We alter it. And in a case as old as the mystery that outlived all witnesses, decades of observation have buried the original truth under layers of interpretation, bias, and contamination. Every new set of eyes on this case has reshaped it. The original investigators in the post-war era saw the world through a lens of stark morality and societal order. Their notes, which we have in fragmented copies, focus on character, on motive rooted in honor, betrayal, and secrets. They walked the streets, interviewed neighbors, and relied on intuition. They built a version of the mystery based on the human element, because that was the technology they had. They were the first observers, and their perception became the foundation, a foundation that may have been flawed from its very inception. Then came the second wave in the 1970s and 80s. A new generation of detectives, armed with the burgeoning tools of forensic science. They dismissed the old guard's hunches as unscientific. They re-examined the physical evidence, or what was left of it. But in their zeal to apply new methods, they may have caused irreparable harm. A piece of fabric, potentially holding microscopic clues, was handled improperly, its chain of custody broken. A latent fingerprint, missed by the original team, was discovered, but the attempt to lift it resulted in a smudge, destroying it forever. They weren't just observing the past, they were clumsy time travelers, trampling on the delicate ecosystem of the crime scene. They created a new version of the mystery, one defined by lab reports and scientific limitations. And now, there is us, the digital observers, online sleuths, documentary filmmakers, and you, watching this right now. We have access to more information than any previous generation. We scan documents, create timelines, and build vast, interconnected databases of theories. But our observation is perhaps the most distorting of all. We see patterns where there are none. We elevate fringe theories based on clicks and engagement. We subject grainy black and white photographs to digital enhancement algorithms that invent detail as much as they reveal it. We have created 1,000 different versions of the mystery, each reflecting our own modern anxieties and desires. The mystery is no longer a singular event. It is a palimpsest, a document on which countless hands have written and erased, each leaving a faint trace of their own story. The original text is unreadable. We are no longer investigating what happened. We are investigating the investigation itself. We analyze the biases of the 1950s detective, the procedural errors of the 1980s lab technician, the confirmation bias of the 2020s Reddit thread. The central question has shifted from who did it to what has our search for the truth done to the truth itself? The particle has been so thoroughly observed that its original state is a matter of pure speculation. The case file is thick, not with evidence, but with the ghosts of its observers. We are conditioned to search for presence, for the clue, the weapon, the body, the confession. We look for what is there. But in a mystery that has outlived all its players, the most powerful evidence is often found in what is not there. The story is told not by clues, but by the voids they left behind. This is the legacy of absence. At the geographic heart of the mystery sits a plot of land. A house once stood there. It was the home of a key figure, the nexus of all the theories. But the house is gone. It was torn down in 1978 to make way for a highway expansion that was never completed. Today, it is an anonymous, overgrown field of weeds and broken concrete, indistinguishable from the land around it. There is no blue plaque, no memorial. The physical anchor of the entire event has been erased from the landscape. It exists only in archived photographs and the fading memories of a generation now gone. The absence of the house is a statement. It tells us that the world moved on, that memory is secondary to progress, that the ground itself can be forced to forget. The absence extends to the people. We have names in the file, of course, but they are just that. Names. The individuals they were attached to have dissolved. Their children and grandchildren are scattered, many unaware of their connection to this dark chapter. We attempted to trace one family line, that of the primary person of interest. We found a great-granddaughter, an elderly woman living 2,000 miles away. When we mentioned the name of her ancestor, she paused. She remembered him only as a stern, quiet man, from a story her mother told her once. The context, the suspicion, the entire drama that consumed his life, it had all evaporated over the generations. The emotional weight of the mystery, the fear and anger that once electrified a community, has discharged into the earth. What remains is a kind of historical folklore, a ghost story stripped of its urgency. The legacy of absence is also bureaucratic. The case is technically still open, but no detective has been assigned to it in over 30 years. It exists in a state of administrative limbo. It is not closed, but it is not alive. It is a ghost in the machine, a line item in a database that persists only because the effort to officially close it is greater than the effort to let it be. Its continued existence in the system is a testament not to hope, but to inertia. This is the ultimate state of a mystery that has outlived its witnesses. It is defined by what it is not. It is a house that no longer stands, a family that no longer remembers, a case that is no longer investigated. We are sifting through the negative space, trying to reconstruct a body from its shadow. The hole in the fabric of history is all that is left. And perhaps the shape of that hole is the only answer we will ever get.
In a basement, in a warehouse, in a digital server farm, a file remains open. Its status is active. It is a single bit of data, a check mark in a box labeled unresolved. It is the final, persistent artifact of the mystery that outlived all witnesses. It signifies a question that has not been answered, a story without an end. This is the nature of the unclosed file. Why do we keep it open? There are no new leads. No long-lost letters are going to surface. No deathbed confessions will be made because all the beds are now empty. DNA analysis is impossible. The samples are either gone or so contaminated as to be useless. Every possible avenue has been explored and has ended in a quiet, indifferent cul-de-sac. To keep the file open is an act that seems illogical, a waste of administrative space. Yet, we do it. Because to close it would be to admit defeat not just on this specific case, but on the very idea that everything is knowable. Our modern world is built on the promise of answers, data analytics, genetic sequencing, global surveillance. We have constructed a civilization dedicated to eliminating the unknown. We map the genome. We chart the stars. We predict the weather. We crave resolution. An unclosed file is an affront to this worldview. It is a small, stubborn pocket of chaos in a world that demands order. It is a monument to the limits of our knowledge. It whispers a terrifying truth, that we are not in control, that some doors will remain locked forever, that some stories will never have a last page. The file's open status is no longer about solving the crime. It is about honoring the question. It is a vigil. It serves as a reminder to every new detective, every archivist, every researcher, that humility is the ultimate tool of any investigation. It teaches us that the absence of an answer is itself a form of information. The mystery has transformed. It is no longer about the events of a distant past. It has become a philosophical object, a thought experiment about the nature of truth and time. It asks us, what do we do with the unknowable? Do we file it away and forget? Or do we leave it open on the desk? A constant reminder of the vast darkness that lies just beyond the reach of our understanding. The Obsidian Archive exists for these unclosed files. We are drawn to them not because we believe we can solve them, but because we believe they are important. They are the cartography of our own ignorance. The file on the mystery that outlived all witnesses will likely remain open forever. It will outlive us, just as it outlived those who were there. Its endurance is its final, chilling legacy. The story is not in the file's contents, but in the simple, profound fact of its continued existence. The search is all that's left.